Hello, podcast family. Welcome back to a new episode of Design Break Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Roark, and today we're diving into a topic that's both daunting and insightful: design disasters, learning from our biggest blunders. And let me be more specific, my biggest blunders. This episode is an essential listen for every single designer as we explore my own biggest blunders and mistakes and how they can become our biggest teachers. But before we get into the thick of it, I want to take a moment to talk about Creative South, as I have in the last, I think, dozen episodes or so. Creative South is an incredible conference that's been a pivotal part of my creative journey for those looking to connect with fellow designers and gain invaluable industry insights. Creative South 2024 is the place to be. This is also a great place for students, those who are just breaking in the creative community, and they are looking for support. They're looking for community. They're looking for a whole lot of tips and tricks and things like that. Creative South is the place to be. I am going to be there this year, as I always am, and I will definitely be sitting around. So if any of you who are listening to this episode, if you show up to Creative South, you see me, come say hello, come talk to me, ask questions. I'm always open to answering everybody's questions. But in order to do that, go to www.creativesouth.com and get your ticket today. You do not want to miss out on it. So imagine you've landed a client that seems perfect, only to be blindsided by a nightmare of stress. Or think back to an opportunity that slipped away because you chose immediate gain over long-term potential. That's what we're unpacking today: my personal design blunders and how they've shaped my career. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about three separate tales, three separate stories that I've experienced in my own creative career. And hopefully these will be learning lessons for you, but it will also be a great way for you to see how I've turned failure or mistakes into something positive, into a learning experience that has guided me through my entire creative career. So first up, we have a tale as old as time when it comes to freelancers, to design professionals. A client who seemed too good to be true, and it honestly was too good to be true. You know, the type, big budget, big promises. I was so tempted and ignored all of the red flags that were out there, and boy, did I pay the price. This goes back probably, like 5, maybe 6 years ago. I had a client reach out to me over email. I can't remember where exactly they heard from me. I think it was maybe on Dribbble. And they were looking for me to help rebrand their company. I'm not going to go into specifics about who they are or anything like that, but they were looking for a big branding project. They had a lot of smaller branding projects along with it. They wanted the moon, like they wanted everything under the sun. And honestly, it was definitely daunting, but at the time, I didn't really have a whole lot of work going on. So I was like, you know what? I think I can take this. I think that this would be a great opportunity. And I decided to push, the limits. I increased my rate for this project because of how long and daunting it would be. And without batting an eye, they said yes to the price point. That should have been kind of a red flag right there. Not so much, but just the fact that, they said yes without even, pushback or any questions or anything like that. And the more that I talked to them, the more, calls that we jumped on, the more meetings we had before we kicked off the project, before we signed any contracts, a lot of small little red flags kept popping up. One big red flag that popped up was that they continuously talked bad about their previous designers or the previous studio or agency that they worked with. I can't remember who they were, and I don't think I knew them at the time. But they kept talking about, how bad it was to work with them, how unorganized they were, how they couldn't listen, and all these things. And the more stuff that they talked about, the more I was like, this sounds a little fishy, but you know what? They're excited to work with me. Let me jump in there. I think we can turn it around. Maybe this can be a long and fruitful relationship. And so I ignored those red flags. The other thing that kept popping up was there were delays upon delays upon delays upon delays. I believe we had started talking in early summertime about working together on this project. And it wasn't until probably maybe September or October where we finally got a contract signed. In fact, there were such long delays where, I would send out something to them to review. I wouldn't hear back from them for a month, maybe even 2 months, I think was the norm at that start. And so I'm like, okay, this is red flag territory right here. Like, they're not getting back to me when they should be. So this is a huge issue. But, the money was good. I was really excited for it. It sounded like a fun project. So I kind of just like brushed it away and said, you know what? I believe like we can turn this around even though we hadn't even started yet. And so we ended up finally signing a contract. We started working together, and I kept getting feedback, a lot of feedback from the client, and we basically just kept spinning wheels. And my biggest mistake was not pushing for revision limits. I had included that we had X number of revisions. I can't remember what it was in the contract. However, I wasn't speaking up. I basically let this person kind of railroad me, bulldoze me down, and I just kept going and going. And especially the biggest trap that I fell into with this was the promise for more work in the future. There was a lot of things going on, a lot of promises that were being made, and being still early in the whole career of Blue Cyclops, this was like year 2, year 3, and this was the first major branding undertaking that we had taken on. I just kind of just, like, rolled with it. It wasn't until the following year, like we were still working on it the following year, where my health really started to take a turn. My stress levels were through the roof. I was honestly like having chest pains. I wasn't as big as I am today. I'm a big guy, if you don't know this. I'm a big guy, but I was just like so stressed, so full of stress, of anxiety. And it had gotten to the point where we had basically finished the scope on a secondary project that we were working on for them, and they basically were wanting us to do free work. They were saying that, oh, I don't believe that it took you this amount of time to do this. I want you to redo this and do that and everything. So they were basically trying to strong arm me into doing free work. And it got to the point where even my friends were worried about me. My wife or fiance at the time was worried about me. And it was just really, really stressful, to finally where I had to say, you know what, I have to break ties with this client. I ended up sending them an email, sharing with them all the files, letting them know like, at this point, I'm going to consider all this done, and we're going to consider parting of the ways for this. I had over delivered on everything, and I thought, okay, maybe this is like the end of all this. It wasn't. There's so many things that I wish I could share that happened after that point. And now, even now, I think back on it, and I'm just like, I can feel the wet blanket of anxiety creeping over me as I'm talking about all this. But there's a lot of stuff I wish I could share, but I honestly don't want the grief of that client ever trying to come back to me, or to, point out things I say on this podcast that could possibly be used against me, though I don't feel like that's the case. I've not said who they are. I've not said anything about the project in particular. So I feel like I'm safe in that point. However, I don't want to put myself into jeopardy. This client, this client that I've kind of labeled personally as my biggest client from hell that I've ever experienced, they, set the stage though for me to completely change the way that I work, change my processes in place, change the way that I take on projects, the checklist to make sure that there's no major red flags. That I have to be thankful for that. I have to be thankful for that learning lesson. So, if I look at it, the things that I changed because of this, horrible mistake, this big design blunder, was I changed my process. I don't take projects at face value. I dig deeper. I want to get to know my potential clients. I want to make sure that they're a good fit. I make sure to put clients through the paces. And the biggest thing is that I don't waste time. So if there's a client that comes to me and then they ghost me for, a few weeks or a month, they're automatically blacklisted at that point. What I'll usually do is I'll offer to share their information with someone else. But, unless it's something where it's like, okay, you were in the hospital for a couple weeks, or you had a child born or something like that, those things are different. Like if there is a reason for them to ghost you for a while, that's completely understandable. But if they are ghosting you and then they're not giving a reason for why they haven't reached out, I just completely blacklist them. I don't believe in wasting time. And especially with that specific client, where even during the project, they would not respond to my emails for weeks or months at a time. And so it just drew on and on and on. And so I've learned so much from that. The other thing too is I'm very clear in expectations on both sides. I make sure that every single client that I work with understands what they can expect from me, but what I should be expecting from them. I go through and outline all the revisions. I let them know in very clear languages, like when things are due, when I need things by. And still, even now, there's still like things that happen where it doesn't, work out, or there's little mistakes here and there on both sides. But it's allowed me to really hone into my process and understand how it should all work, how to keep things going. Where are there problems? Where are there red flags that pop up? And so I'm very grateful for that story, for that first story that I shared here, the first tale of these three. So now let's jump into the second tale, a tale of a missed gold mine, literally. Early in my career, this is even farther back than working with that client. This is back in college. I had the chance, or I had the opportunity to work with Cards Against Humanity, the big card game, right? Everybody sees it at Target. Everybody sees it on the shelves and everything. This was way back before all of that. This was before they became the massive hit of a game that they are today. This was right after their huge Kickstarter that broke all the records on Kickstarter. I knew some of the people who were involved. I had worked with them on a previous game that they had called Humans versus Zombies, which is a game I played on my college campus, and is a game played all throughout the world, basically. If you want to learn more about that, go check out Humans versus Zombies on Google or on YouTube. You'll see some funny videos of grown college kids playing with Nerf guns and socks and stuff. It's funny. But I knew someone who was a part of that, who was a founding member of that game. He then was a founding member of Cards Against Humanity. And so they basically offered, hey, would you like to help us out with some illustrations? And I did. I created, I think, 2 or 3 separate projects with them. A lot of it had to do with marketing, specifically marketing pushes to other countries. And it was a lot of fun. I honestly loved the work that I did with them. Now, all that being said, I don't have any negative feelings about that at all. There's like what I'm about to share, there's nothing bad on their part. This was a choice. Just like we all have choices, this was a major choice that honestly could have changed my career, my trajectory a lot more than the choice that I actually made for this. But the first project that they came to me with was for a marketing campaign. They had no money, no real budget for it. They had, just very little. And so they offered me this like golden opportunity, something that I didn't see as a golden opportunity at the time. They offered me a choice between cash money and possible equity in the game. And I'm not going to go into detail about how much money it was. I'm not going to go into how much the equity was in it. It was small. It was a very small percentage, but it was something that, at the time I was like, oh, it's only this amount. I don't think it's worth it. And before I go into like what, into this deeper, let me just say their previous game that they had, Humans vs. Zombies, made no money. This was a free game, a game that no one, was profiting off of. And so when they had this game, Cards Against Humanity, I was like, okay, they'll probably make some money off of it. I wasn't expecting it to become the phenomenon that it is today. And they offered, what they offered was they offered me a small cash amount plus one of the first boxes of Cards Against Humanity. So I'd get like a free box of it. And, at the time, I'm a college student. I'm a broke college student. I'm doing freelancing to make extra money and to help support, my mom and, keep a roof over our heads and everything like that. And so it just so happened that this was around Christmas time. And I was like, you know what? I really want to buy my mom a nice gift. So I compared and contrasted. I didn't really ask anyone for advice because I didn't think that there was like any, problem with what I was about to do. But I decided to go with the cash amount plus the box of Cards Against Humanity. And to this day, it's a fun learning experience. It's a fun thing that I think about and I laugh about. At the same time, I feel like such an idiot for not taking a bit of a risk. And so now today, that same percentage that I would have gotten would have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not going to say $1,000,000, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough probably to pay for my house. And so I regret that. I do regret that mistake. Now, what I learned from that is to be open to non-conventional payments from clients. Now, have I taken any equity from a client ever since? No, I haven't. And the reason why is because I have a specific checklist, and I'm not going to go through it here because I feel like everybody deserves to create their own checklist when it comes to figuring these things out. But the way that I look at it is I have a checklist of 5 main points, and I basically create like a pros and cons list. Should I go for the equity or should I go for the payment now? And what it comes down to is it something that's going to return in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Will it ever return? Is it something that I feel like is going to have a return at all? Is it something that could end up like a Facebook situation where I get swindled out of my percentage? All of those things are very important to consider, at least to me. And so, it's allowed me to create this checklist, and it's allowed me to see like there are other ways of working with clients besides just cash payments or bank transfers or whatever. Now, what I have done in the past, based on what I learned from this experience with Cards Against Humanity, is the fact that I can do a trade of service instead. Before we worked on Cards Against Humanity, we actually, with Humans versus Zombies, I did a trade of service where I created a series of posters for them. And the person that my main person I talked to over there, he ended up doing a trade where I created these posters and he created my first website, the first website that featured Bob the Blue Cyclops on it. And it was really cool. It was a really fun site to have. It wasn't Blue Cyclops, it was rockyroark.com. And it was a great experience with that. And fast forward probably to 2017, 2018, I ended up doing another trade of service where I did a trade of service with a leather company. And some of you who have followed my work, you probably have seen it, Bristol Leather Company, the big bison logo and everything. We did a trade of service where we created this suite of brand elements for them, a simple design system or sorry, not design system, but design brand toolkit for them where they could use specific color sets, typesets, badges and logos and everything. And we ended up doing a trade of service where they created for me, let's see, I think I have it in my back pocket here. They created for me, I think it was like maybe a dozen of these leather notebooks. Let's see if it'll focus. These leather notebooks here that are really well crafted. Like this, I got this separate from the batch. This was my first one. I actually ordered this on Etsy from them. And it's now what, 5 years old? No, sorry. It's 6 or 7 years old and it's still holding up really well. And so I did a trade of service because I thought, oh, these would be a perfect gift to give to clients and, referral partners and things. And so I ended up getting a dozen of them made. And I gave out all of them over the course of about 2 years to a bunch of people that I know. And so I was able to do that trade of service. And from those little gifts that I gave of these like leather notebook covers here, we actually got 2 clients from that. So we have a return on that investment. We have an ROI for that where, this, free project basically, or this trade of service project that we did ended up bringing in, I'm going to say an estimate of about maybe $20,000 worth of work. And so that to me is a great like ROI type of scenario. So, it's a crazy story. It's a story I've told a lot. In fact, I believe I've said it on the podcast before, this whole thing. I love that story. I think it's great. I have no ill will towards the Cards Against Humanity people. I think that, it was my decision. It was my choice. We worked together for over the course of, I think, about a year, doing a couple of projects here and there. And then eventually we parted ways. I believe one of the founders, his wife, became the illustrator. And honestly, I really enjoyed all the illustrations that they created and everything. I have not played Cards Against Humanity that much, even though I have like this box set of it. But whenever my wife would go hang out with her friends, she would take the Cards Against Humanity box with her, and she would play the game and everything. So, this one's a little bit more lighthearted than the first tale. All right, so now we come to the third and final tale of my design blunders, and that is taking a freelance hiatus. Not once, but twice. I made this mistake twice. Both times I felt secure in the jobs that I had, the full-time gigs, only to basically kind of be shown the door. And let me, add a caveat here. The second time around, no fault to anybody. There were some layoffs, perfectly fine. In fact, my old job became one of my biggest clients. And I love working with them today. Like, we still have a very strong working relationship. In fact, probably when we have our new website up in the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to finally see that case study. And I'm really excited to share it. But in both of these situations, I was kind of left with no leads, no clients. Basically a scenario that I kind of talked about, especially the first time around in episode 14, where we talk about, what to do when you're fired or laid off or let go. Basically the idea is to never put all your eggs in one basket, which is kind of what I did. And so with the first time that this happened, basically I took some bad advice from my boss. My boss said, you're making enough money here. Why do you need to be freelancing? Like, there's no reason to be doing that. And so I took his advice. I didn't take on freelance work. In fact, I turned it down. I ended up, turning down projects with studios and agencies that I really admired. I turned down work for freelancers I really admired. And ultimately what happened is, when I lost my job, I had nothing. I had no leads to speak of. And I kind of had to rebuild myself and build myself up. And when I ended up finding a job after that, I told myself, I will never stop freelancing in this opportunity. I will freelance the entire time that I'm working at this job. And so when I was let go from that job, I had the opportunities, I had the leads, I had the connections to where I could go in and I could find the work that I needed. And within, I think it was just like maybe 2 weeks, I had enough work to keep me afloat for about 3 or 4 months. So, in this situation, when it comes to, having a full-time job, a full-time gig, if you're not freelancing, you're putting yourself at risk. And I'm saying that not because you need the extra money. You need the extra work, the extra connections that you make, because there's a good possibility that with your, full-time gig, you might be under NDAs. You might be under certain circumstances where you can't show work. And that's not good. That is no bueno. It's not a good thing to be doing. So you need to always be freelancing. And so what I learned from this was, from the 2 times that this happened, was that honestly, for myself, I'm going to be my own boss. I don't think I'll ever go back to working full time anywhere. I enjoyed the time where I worked in-house at 2 separate startups. But honestly, I don't think I would ever go back. But it also taught me too that everyone should be freelancing. Everybody should be going and freelancing while they're working a full-time gig, because you don't know what the future holds. You don't know what is going to happen in the next, month, or the next week, or the next day. You just never know. And so, that's my big takeaway from this last little tale here. So let's switch gears a little bit here. I've shared these 3 tales. Now let's kind of ask ourselves, how do we turn blunders into building blocks? How do we take these mistakes, these failures, these detrimental moments in our lives into something that we can actually build from, that we can learn from? And honestly, the first thing is to just embrace the mistakes, embrace the failure. They're not just step backs, but they're stepping stones to greater understanding. Delve into resilience. The design industry is like a roller coaster. You need to be ready for its ups and downs and sideways and backways and all the G-force that comes with it. And when it comes to decision making, think long term. Consider the potential of every opportunity that comes your way. Remember to keep your freelance network active. Even when you're comfortably employed, it's your safety net, it's your plan B, it's your escape hatch. Like all of these things pair together. So let's go back and talk about those three one more time. Embrace your mistakes. That's number one. Embrace your mistakes. Learn from them. That goes back to tail number one. What did I do? I learned to look out for those red flags. I looked into improving my process so that I didn't make one of those mistakes again. And honestly, since then, I haven't had a client from hell experience. The second one is delve into resilience. The design industry is a roller coaster, right? And so, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know if we should take that short-term gain of, let's say, $200, or if we should, press our luck and go for the 2% stake in the company, right? We have to think and consider, the long term versus the short term. Now, you could be broke. You could need money for some sort of car payment or rent or whatever. In those situations, go for the short term gain. Don't go for the long term gain. And then finally, the third one, again, this goes back to the third sale, is remember to keep your freelance network active. A lot of people don't understand how freelancing is such an important part of the creative community, of the design community. It's something that we will always experience and always need to adapt to. And with that, this is basically a wrap on today's episode of Design Break Podcast. We've journeyed through some of the most significant design blunders of my career and extracted the invaluable lessons that they've taught me. It's not just about the mistakes we make, but how we rise from them that truly defines our path as designers. We have to be a phoenix from the ashes, so to speak, sometimes. But if you found this episode valuable, I encourage you to share it with your design network, share it with your friends, share it with anyone who you feel like would gain some wisdom from these stories. Your feedback, your comments, are very important. And it's a way to keep me and this podcast going. I don't make any money off of this podcast. I don't really plan to make any money off of this podcast. This podcast is meant for me to share my experiences with all of you, to hopefully inspire you and to push you beyond those moments. So please definitely share this with your friends. Make sure to comment down below on YouTube if you have any questions. And be sure, if you have the time, to stop and give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is that you are getting your podcasting fix. But I want to thank you all for joining me in dissecting the challenging yet rewarding aspects of our design careers. Remember, every blunder is a stepping stone to success. And stay tuned for Design Break Podcast for more insights. And until next time, always remember to stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. That's it for me, everybody. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye.